We're keeping it short and sweet, so we're going to hear from our last speaker now, Richard. I think this man almost needs no introduction at these things. Richard Boyd Barrett is a TD with People Before Profit, who has also been one of the few vocal supporters of the Palestine movement for many years now, especially as an elected representative, when so few, even in a country like Ireland where most people support it, are willing to come out and speak in support of these things. So please welcome Richard.
Thanks, Rasha, and Rasha deserves a big round of applause for organising this protest, this extremely important protest. Friends, Israel is a terrorist state. Now, we chant that at demonstrations, and we have been chanting it for many, many years. But now more than ever, we have to assert that as the factual description of this state. It's not just a slogan, it's not just rhetoric. Israel is a terrorist state. It is built on terrorism, it is based on terrorism, it is sustained on terrorism, its DNA is terrorism. And we are not going to end the horror and the bloodshed until the world recognises that fact. And if we didn't have enough evidence before the last year, then can anybody seriously dispute that proposition after what we have witnessed in the last year? There is simply no atrocity, no crime, no red line, no horror that Israel isn't willing to commit against Palestinian people, against Lebanese people, or anybody who stands up to their project of occupation, of apartheid, of ethnic cleansing, of theft of land, and of genocide. And again, it's very, very important to say that the more than 40,000 people who've been butchered and massacred by Israel in Gaza, now thousands in Lebanon, killed and injured, the indiscriminate bombing of residential areas, of hospitals, of civilian infrastructure. There is nothing these criminals won't do. But this is not just because of Netanyahu. Netanyahu is a deranged, bloodthirsty mass murderer. About that, there should be no doubt. But it's not just about Netanyahu. There is a narrative out there which suggests, if it wasn't for Netanyahu's political difficulties and the fear that he'll be thrown out in the next election, this wouldn't be happening. That is not a correct analysis of what Israel does to the Palestinian people, or has done and are doing to the people of Lebanon, or what they have done in the region. This is not new. It is the logical extension of everything Israel has been about since it was founded in an act of terrorism and ethnic cleansing in 1948. And it has sustained itself through terrorism, through ethnic cleansing, through apartheid, through warmongering, every single year since 1948. Genocide, apartheid, brutal oppression, brutal occupation, criminal actions, day in, day out, breaching international law at every level, finally reaching the level of genocide that we've witnessed in Gaza. I know that, and anybody who's Palestinian knows that, The reason I'm involved in politics was because I was there in 1987 when the first Intifada started. There was no Hamas. There was no paramilitary resistance. There were young people from the refugee camps in the West Bank out on the streets on unarmed protests, just demanding an end to the oppression, just demanding the right to return to the homes from which they'd been expelled in 1948, and they were beaten down, and they were shot down, and they were crushed in the most vicious and brutal way. That is why there is resistance in Palestine. In fact, it took many years before organisations like Hamas even came into existence, or Hezbollah. I mean, I see Dr. Abdullah here, who I'm... how many times, Abdullah, have we been out protesting about Israel's crimes in Lebanon? Back in 1996, back in 2006, and before I was active, the massacres of Shatila and Sabra in 1982, where they collaborated with the Phalange, fascists, that's what Phalange means, fascist organisations to massacre Palestinians in refugee camps. I remember as a young person hearing it on the radio, the screaming, the shooting, as Israel collaborated with fascists to massacre innocent civilians, Palestinian civilians in refugee camps in Beirut. So this is the nature of this regime. It is a vampire that drinks the blood of Palestinians and anybody who gets in its way. And that is the critical point we have to understand. And all of that, and Lebanon more than anybody else knows this, all of that has been enabled by the big colonial powers. Why is Lebanon riddled with sectarian division? Because of the carve-up of Lebanon by France and Britain in the Sykes-Picot agreement. Just as the promotion of the Zionist project was promoted by the British and later the Americans in order to colonise and control that region. And Israel could not sustain itself, could not continue its crimes, could not commit this genocide, could not sustain the apartheid regime without the weapons, the finance and the political support of the Western powers. That is the reality. And we all understand this. But there's still this pretense that somehow this is just a reaction, maybe an overreaction to terrorists. But the truth is, the terrorist is Israel and its sponsors, supporters and facilitators. And lastly, we come to the Irish government's role in that. And that role is shameful. The Irish government are speaking out of both sides of their mouth time and time again on this issue. And the ditch revelation about the phone call between Pascal Donoghue and the Israeli government gives the game away. Again, we all know this, don't we? I don't have to tell anybody here, but we need to explain that to the rest of the world. Because this government pretends when it is under pressure, when there are masses of people on the streets, that it cares about the Palestinians. But in truth, they were mouthing and justifying all Israel's talking points, all its propaganda back in October, November, and the early months of the genocide in Gaza. They voted against motions calling for sanctions against Israel for its crimes. They only recognised the Palestinian state because of the immense mobilisation of people, the length and breadth of this country that has forced them to do it. But quietly, the nod and a wink. Quietly, the nod and a wink, and we now have a confirmed instance of this. Telling them, we won't let that bill pass. And they used the cynical manoeuvre of the money message. And again, for people who don't know parliamentary games, this is one of the games they play. When the majority of TDs vote for something, usually because they're forced to, but the government doesn't like it, doesn't have the political courage to vote against certain measures because of the popular public support for them, they let it pass and then they kill it quietly with the thing called the money message. That's what they do. Parliamentary tricks to sabotage the democratic process while giving a nod and a wink to Israel. Don't worry, we're not going to do anything that will seriously impact on you. That is what is going on. And the fact that somebody was just telling me, I didn't know this, at the UN, when Netanyahu gave his deranged speech justifying Israel's crimes, some people walked out. To their credit, the Irish government didn't. Shame on them. Shame on them. But I mean, that's only symbolism. But Jesus Christ, shouldn't they have done it? Shouldn't they have done it? Right? Or shouldn't, when they were in the United Nations, have called out the US government for continuing to arm and support this genocide? Why do they not do that? They never say a word about that. They never say a word about that. Complicity isn't even the right word. Israel is simply an extension of US and Western colonial interests in the Middle East. That is the truth of this. And the Irish government are not willing to call out, but that is the obvious fact. It is the obvious fact. So, what are we going to do, right, with this two-faced, dishonest government that continues to allow the US military into Shannon while they are arming, supporting, collaborating with this genocide, allowing Israeli weapons to go through Irish airspace in order to commit the atrocities in Lebanon and in Gaza and in the West Bank. We have to force them, just like we forced Palestinian state recognition, just like we forced them to at least talk about suspending the EU-Israel agreement. Now again, that's just talk, right? But they're forced to talk about it because of the people on the street. So they are under pressure, and as dark and as bleak and as horrible as what's going on in Gaza and Lebanon is, do not despair. Because that is what Israel wants you to do. They want you to despair. They want you to believe they are unbeatable. But the truth is, they are under massive pressure. The global movement in solidarity with Palestine, and now with the people of Lebanon against this genocidal terrorist state, is unprecedented. It is an unprecedented movement. It has power. And we can push these back. We need to make Palestine and Lebanon and the question of breaking all relations with this terrorist state an election issue in the forthcoming election. We need to demand absolute commitments on the Occupied Territories Bill, on the divestment bill, on the expulsion of the entire Israeli diplomatic apparatus, on ending all economic, trade, academic, cultural links with this barbaric state. We have to demand those commitments. I know the people are with us on this, but we have to force those commitments out of our politicians and continue to mobilise on the streets to demand action, not words and not duplicity, which is what we're getting from this government. Sorry for going on so long, but I just want to finish by saying there's another national demonstration the IPSC have called next week. We need to have tens and tens and tens of thousands of people on the streets to carry on the pressure. We owe it to the people of Lebanon. We owe it to the people of Palestine. We owe it to humanity.
Irish government, you can't hide.
You're supporting genocide.
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 Boycott, divest.
We will not stop. We will not rest.
Boycott, divest.
We will not stop. We will not rest.
Boycott, get a cheer from the Arabic speakers in the crowd so we know if we can do some Arabic chants. Okay. Radwan is going to lead us in a couple of Arabic chants just to keep the spirit going.
Hello everyone. So we're gonna do some Arabic chants. I'm gonna say the full line and expect that we all repeat it together. Okay? يا لبنان نحنا حدك لو كنا عابر الحدود. يا لبنان نحنا حدك لو كنا عابر الحدود. فكر العدو يفرقنا شعبك حي ما بيموت. فكر العدو يفرقنا شعبك حي ما بيموت. قصتنا مش من يومين قصتنا صار عمرها عقود. قصتنا مش من يومين قصتنا صار عمرها عقود. لا منركع ولا مننزل واللي تهجر راح يعود. لا منركع ولا مننزل واللي تهجر راح يعود. من جنوبي للشمال شعبي صامد ما بيموت. من جنوبي